Hey everyone, I did a review a little while ago from Auxbeam. They sent me a 22-inch light bar that I put on my wife's Soul, the yellow one. It was supposed to go on my car, but my car was getting an engine replacement under warranty at the time. So my wife inherited it. So I contacted Auxbeam and I was like, hey, can I get a discount or something on another one so this way I can actually put one on my car? Because I originally wanted it. And they sent back, like, well, here, I got another one for you to review. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll check this out then. So they supplied me with a 32-inch curved light bar that not only is white light, it does RGB at the same time. So it comes with the light bar itself, which we will tear down in a few seconds and take a look inside. See if it's very similar or a lot different than the 22-inch one. Comes with a wiring harness. Comes with the extra buttons and controllers, and this is the RGB/Bluetooth controller that handles all the colors and connects to your phone, which I'll show you later. The mounting hardware, 2 little booklets, and 2 little stickers. So let's attempt to get down to the bench. You definitely know for a fact, since my bench only gets 19 inches when I put my camera up top, we're not going to fit this all in here, but I'll see what I can do and work it in. So let's tear into this first. Okay, so here's the light bar itself. The build quality, at least from the exterior, is basically the same as the 22-inch, except for one, yes, it is curved. And if we look at the front, again, we have the projections on the center. And on the side, you see, since this is a bigger light bar, we have more of the flood beams. They're using the same screws as before, same end caps as well. So I'm assuming this is actually built the same way. And here's their branding. So let's pop this off. This feels like the same plastic they're using before. And let's take a look inside. Okay, so I got the mounting brackets off. And the cover for it is just like the other one. It's probably a 1/4 inch thick piece of plexiglass. And the bars themselves are actually straight. They just flex as they bend around when you screw them in or unscrew them. Now, here's a little different. The 22-inch one, they were full solid pieces for every 4 light segments, if that's who I want to put it. These ones are different. I took out all the screws. Let's see if I can do this. They are completely separate. You got the lenses in one part, and then you got the reflector. The reflector comes in this big piece right here. So let's get these out of the way. And here's the right side, and you can see this is just another big segment for the actual reflector part. And here's the third segment over here. So let's put this down off to this side. Now, at first inspection, you can definitely tell they did a very good job of labeling that. Where is my tweezers? As you can see here, we have your regular 3-watt LEDs, the Cree LEDs that were on the 22-inch one. But they also have the RGB LEDs separate, sitting on top of them. So when you use this on white light, it's actually using a regular white light. When you use it on color, it's using a separate one. And you can see the bands for each one shooting on over. They also have some 0 ohm, just jumper resistors. I take it this is the actual main power rail, because there is a white wire running straight down in here. We do have a few screws. The one thing I am not sure about is why we... Wow, that just fell apart. I guess that's not needed. That's just extra and they didn't clean it up. What about this one? Yeah, that's just extra. Okay, well, that's kind of interesting. Come on, get up. Get over here. There we go. Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not sure what was up with that. This is just extra flashing from cutting. Oh, this is from where the screw holes were for each one of the reflectors. That's what this is. What those 2 extra wires were, I don't know, because here's a few more sitting over here. Just like this extra wire sitting in there. I have no clue. And yep, here's another one. That's interesting. I don't know why. They're not connected to anything. They're not soldered. It's just extra wire sitting in there. Nothing over here. We do see our DC to DC buck converter over here with our giant inductor. It looks basically to be the same topology, or a very similar version of it that was in the 22-inch one. You got your diodes, your 0 ohm resistors that jump on over power to the individual RGB LEDs. There is some leftover flux here from where they soldered, but it's not wet, it's dry, it's solid. It's probably a no clean flux, so I wouldn't worry about that. The soldering itself seems to be very good. Let's go over to this side. Because this is a aluminum back board, so that's why they have to use the 0 ohm jumpers, because you can't have circuits on the other side. This is directly connected to the heatsink. So they did a pretty good job on soldering onto there. And I'm not seeing any other copper wire sticking out through there. The build quality looks good. That's just residual glue. Let's go just a little bit more here to the edge. Now, this is where our wires actually come in. And again, we have our PWM red, green, and blue wires right there. Then you have your main positive rail. So this is right there. That's your main positive rail in. And right here, we can see the main negative rail running straight down here. So that's the topology, the way they laid out the board itself. And again, this is a no clean flux. So it's dry. It's just baked on there because it probably took a ton of solder to put these high amperage lines on here. So I don't believe that's going to be a problem. The only problem I saw inside here was these little leftovers. I have no... And it just popped somewhere. Yeah. I don't know what was the deal with this, but... chances are, considering they were in the screw hole and it's nothing but aluminum to the bottom, most likely it would have never shorted out, but that's kind of, whoa, what happened there? Okay, so let's wire this up real quick to the bench power supply and take a look at it while I have all the covers off and see exactly how it's working. Okay, so I got wired up to my bench power supply, set for 15 volts. I haven't turned the power on yet, but on the supplied wiring harness, they give you these really big ring connectors. So I got those connected, and it's also going through, let's see here, a 30 amp fuse, if I can get the right angle there. Yep, 30 amp green fuse. All wired up, and you have two switches on here. One which is right here. This is your main on-off switch, and then you have a secondary switch run directly from the controller itself, and this button switches from your white light to apparently a red light. So let's turn on the power supply and turn on this unit and see what we can do with it. Okay, got power, and apparently I left the switch on. So as you can see, it's a little red at the moment here. Turn it off. Back this off just a little bit. Turn it back on, and yeah, ignore the fan from my power supply. I gotta change out that fan. But yeah, you can barely even see my hand right now. But you can see the switch. Turn it off. Turn it back on, and it goes to red. That's the one thing I've noticed, because I have played with this a little bit already. It does not remember the previous state. So every time you turn it off and turn it on, it either goes white or it goes red, and it goes back and forth. So like it's red, turn it off, wait a few seconds, turn it back on, and it's white. Turn it back off, turn it back on, and yeah, we're back to red again. So those are the two default states. Now, of course, once it's on, I can use a switch, and I can switch it back and forth from white to red, to white, to red. But it doesn't have state remembering, or at least not correctly. It always switches back and forth. There's white, and there's red. I don't know why it does that. Okay, so I'm not sure how my camera's going to respond to this amount of light here, and it's going to be bright as ever. Okay, good. So now we're getting the red LEDs first. And we can see they're all the RGBs. Now, this is probably going to blind the camera. Let's switch over to red, or white. Okay, wow, that's insane. Thank God you can tell by my hand being very dark in the back, the contrast, the exposure actually compensated for it. So you can actually see them all running. Switch back over to the red. So now, the way to change from red to a different color, you got to use the app. You can't do it through this button. You only have white or red. That's all you get. So now to change the color from red to anything else, you need to use their app. And sorry for the people that have the older light bars. This light bar does not work, or at least the controller does not work with the updated version with BLE dim. It just doesn't work. Sorry. They have a new software out called Car Light, which you can find on Auxbeam's website. And you open that up, and this is basically what it looks like. Why default to a Jeep, I don't know. But ain't no big deal. You select which light once you set it up, and we switch the color, and you get a color wheel. And then we can go, and you can see we can just change it on the fly any which way we want. You can change the amount of brightness. So it has pretty good PWM, and you can see the individual 3 in there. Or actually, wait, let me get a little more dimmer. My camera's not getting... Yeah, I don't think the camera's going to get dark or dim enough so you can actually see the individual pixels. They also have a mode control. You can go breadth, and you can control the speed of it if you wanted to. Now, granted, these are not as bright as the regular white LEDs, but they do shine fairly well. Case in point here, I'm watching my power supply fluctuate right now from about 4.5 watts up to 7 roughly, at least on this breath mode. I've seen it as high as 10 if I use the color wheel and I get in just the right spot, it'll go up to 10 watts. But if I switch back over to white, right now it's pulling 114 watts. But here's the weird thing too. If I use the app to go into white, turn that off for a second. If I use the app to go into white, I'm pulling 114 watts, but if I use the button and switch back and forth, you get a little more brightness out of the white light. Now I'm at 144 watts on this bar. So I don't know why using the app, yeah, see, it went down a little bit. It's at 112 watts. Now it's at 143 watts. Now watch again, it will slightly dim. And I don't know why it won't. The app won't give you the full 143 watts. But of course, now when you use the button, it defaults back to red. So you can go custom colors if you want to and have it go back and forth. And 4, 5, 7.5 watts on this one. Or you can try to impersonate a cop. I wholly do not recommend you do that unless you really want to spend a night in jail with Bubba. Don't do that. But yeah, you can make your own custom colors with it. And just like BLE dim, you can play music, or you can go by voice if you wanted to. Or you have your regular color wheel. Or recently used colors. So, other than those little wires right here that are extra sticking out through these screw holes, I don't really see a problem with the light bar itself. It looks like to be a good build quality. That might have just been a manufacturing fluke. So, let's go ahead and put the light bar back together, and then we'll take a look at the controller itself. Okay, I think I figured out why those weird pieces of copper were sticking out of a few select holes. Basically, these screws that hold down each individual, yeah, like this one's loose, hold down each individual reflector, they don't actually screw into the heatsink, they screw into the metallized back portion of the circuit board. And some of the screw holes are perfectly fine, and other ones, they've actually over-drilled them or something, and they just slide right in and out, and they don't have anything to grip onto. So what they did is they took a little piece of wire, such as this nice twisted piece right here, stuck it in, bent it to the side to help make the hole smaller and give this something to grip onto. So that's what the pieces of wire were for. Someone over-drilled the holes in mass production. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual controller box itself. Looks like we have our 4-wire output for our RGB and a common ground. You have your trigger button, which switches from the white to the red setting. And you have your 12-volt DC input. So let's open it up and take a look inside. Okay, so I got the 4 screws out from beneath it. Now, before I open it up, I want to show you, because I've already had it open once so I can see what's going on to begin with before I did this video. They don't have a seal that runs around the outside of it or around the perimeter of the box itself. They decided to pot the electronics inside of it, and they use this gray stuff. Well, it was a great idea, and I like the fact that they tried potting it, but you'll see as I open it up, the potting did not adhere to anything. It has a nice pour to it, and you can see each individual circuit right inside of it. Let's see if I can get a better angle there. But Yeah, even right here. But it didn't actually adhere to the part. So the potting is not the best job. But we'll take a look inside. Yeah, here's the top. Let's put that to the side. And here's the circuit board itself. Now, all this potting, like here's a nice big chunk right here. This was sitting, there's like a little 8-pin chip sitting right here with 3 resistors. Might have been sitting over here, but it was laying on top and poured in here. But unfortunately, the potting material they used did not have enough stickiness or adhesion to it. So it literally just came up in big sheets. So water could still get underneath here. So good idea, just bad execution. And if we pull this board out, you'll see I left some in here still. Some of it did pour out on the backside. Because as you can see, this is a single-sided aluminized board as well. So just to show how easy this stuff comes up, look right here. It's just, it peels right out. It did not have any adhesion whatsoever. So I like the idea, but chances are when I seal this back up, I'm going to run a bead of silicone right around here, and that will seal it up. They do have good weather sealing around the wires, the pieces right here, so that will work nicely. I just think they need to work on their potting material a little bit more. Like here's a little bit still sitting on a capacitor. So of course the first thing that really sticks out is the Bluetooth module, and that's what was communicating with my phone earlier. And it seems that this is not an ESP32 or 802066. This is an obscure TTC2541. And I looked it up. It's basically sort of like the ESP8266, but it's not made by Expressive or anything like that. So it has its own tool chain. It's not that easy to program. And I look through here, you got your 3 inductors, and this is your red, green, and blue, and your common going out to those RGB LEDs that are in the light bar. And over here, you have the thinner wires for your trigger switch, and the thicker wires for your DC input. Now you do have some small linear regulators just to drop the voltage down from either 12 or 24 volts so it can control the microcontroller, and then you can have the full power running through because the DC-DC converters are actually in the light bar itself, so it doesn't need to actually do high amperage step down here yet, so you still have the full line voltage running through here. Another thing to note too is on this Bluetooth module, you got a dual row of headers, and this back row is soldered. The front row is not soldered. Granted, I see a few wires running through here, a few traces. It doesn't look like, especially on the back side of the board, that those actually go anywhere and do anything. So chances are these pins, I'm going to solder them anyway here in a second, just to see if it changes the way the unit behaves, but I highly doubt it because I don't feel like you yank it the whole board off and then retracing everything. But we'll do a quick test. Chances are they just didn't solder these because they're not actually used, but it would have been nice if they did solder them because it just makes the board a little more rigid. I mean, they're there, you might as well solder them. So let me go ahead and solder these real quick. We will assemble them because there really isn't much more to show on this board. Okay, so there we go. All those pins are now connected. So if they actually do something, we might have had a partial connection, partial not connection, because they're touching but not really. So let's see what happens. Although I have a feeling it's not going to change the operation of the unit at all. Okay, so let's run a generous bead of silicone around here before we reseal it. Okay, let's seal it up as best we can. Okay, let's wipe off the excess silicone from the sides. So there we go, it's back together. So let's put the whole unit back together on the bench one more time and see if it changes the way it operates at all. Although I still highly doubt it. Okay, we're back after resealing this unit up and resoldering that one little row of pins. So let's turn the power supply back on again. Give the unit power. Ignore my fan again. And yeah, we immediately went to white again. So let's turn it off. Turn it back on. Yep, we're still going to red again. There's white. Okay, so we're still not remembering our state, or we're bouncing between states, between off and on. So that hasn't changed at all. My button still switches me from white to red, and that's it. Let me get my phone. And here we are again. Let's see here. Let's refocus just slightly. There we go. And put my hand here so you can see what's going on. Yep, still reacting the same. Mode, breath style. Yeah, there's no change in operation, so those 8 pins that weren't soldered, they weren't soldered because they weren't needed. It would have just been nice if they soldered it for strain relief, but okay, so it wasn't a functional thing whatsoever. So before we install this on the car, we have one other thing we need to look at. Auxbeam also sent me this nice little LED light bar rocker switch. This is an extra add-on item. Get that out of the way. And it looks like this. LED light bar, and it's your main on and off switch. Meant to replace this one right here. So let's go ahead and try that real quick. Now, LED light bar is always lit up, and that one turns on if you actually turn the light on, because now you can see it's red, off, on, white, and they're both lit up again. So this way you have LED light bar always lit. So the way it works is black goes to black, the red goes to the bottom connection, and the yellow goes to the middle connection, and that gives you the correct wiring to replace it for a better light bar or light switch. So it's your choice. If you just want to have a little round hole, you can use the one that it came with. Works perfectly fine, and it sort of has like a little bit of sealing to it. Or if you have one of those specialty connectors that have like the 4 or 5 slots for these styles, you can, I think this is like $8 or so for it, and you can use this instead, and it works perfectly fine. So let's go ahead and get started with the actual car install. Okay, and here it is mounted on the front. Take a little bit of a closer look. Mounted up real nicely. Then inside, you see right here, I got the relay sitting mounted right there. The control box is shoved off to the side here. Wiring runs down the side and runs straight on down, if the camera can actually see it. Yep, runs straight on down to there. And if you go back up here, the 2 control wires, your 2 switches, run right through into my firewall grommet. Yep. Now if we go inside the car, you can see I have both switches mounted right here. Now I chose to use the round one because I don't have the opening for the oval one for the upgraded model. So all we have to do now is wait for tonight, and we can actually see what it does at nighttime. Okay, it finally got dark. So I'm parked at the same place I did with my wife's car, at the end of the road, the little cul-de-sac. And right now I just have my running lights on. So let's walk over to the car and let's see here. First, we'll turn on the regular headlights. And these are the Auxbeam LED headlights that I reviewed previously. The high beams, which are completely out of whack right now. And finally, let's go with the light bar. And yeah, that is really freaking bright. Now, of course, if I just press the button again, the trigger button, it will go to red and go back to white again. So let's look at this from a different angle, and then we'll start playing with the colors. Okay, so now we're on the driver's side of the car, and I only have my running lights on right now. So let's turn on the low beam headlights. There we go. My high beams, which are completely wrongly adjusted. And finally, the new light bar. Oh yeah, check that out. That is really nice. And go to red. You can see the red on the floor there. It doesn't really project nearly as much. It's more for show. But you switch back on over, and it's just like, wow, yes. definitely. And remember, I do have this exposure locked, and I do have these mounted low, so yeah, they're not going to throw a beam forever. If you mounted this on top of a truck, yes, it would throw a beam really, really far. But if nothing else, this really illuminates the front. Okay, so right now I do not have my low beam headlights on. It is just the light bar on white. So we're going to play with the app here and the lights for 1 second. So let's select the front. Let's go to color. And then we get immediately. You can see how everything just kind of blends together to an extent. And let's go on over to mode. Just get a breath style. Let's speed it up a little bit. Want to do your customs that I made up so far. And if you want to impersonate a cop and try to get yourself arrested. Yeah, that would definitely get you arrested. Don't do that on the road. But, yep, there's my custom. There's my breath. So, let's recap. This is the 32-inch RGB LED version from Auxbeam versus the 22-inch that you saw me review and install on my wife's car about a month ago. This one is 180 watts versus the other one that was 120. Plus this one, of course, is RGB LED as well too, and it's controlled by a new app. Sorry everyone, I've read all the comments through Amazon and the different places that actually sell Auxbeam's bar. They're using the new app. It works with an app called CarLight, as you saw earlier in this video. BLE dim, it doesn't work anymore. It doesn't support it. And supposedly from Auxbeam's website, the reason they did that is because BLE dim only controls one fixture at a time. And people have been buying this and then the rock lights that are also RGB and some other stuff, and they wanted an option to control multiple lights simultaneously, and that's why Auxbeam moved over to the new app. So overall, the kit works. It's pretty good quality. There's only two little things you really got to work on. One was the potting material in the controller board. As you see in my install, I put it in the engine bay. It's kind of tucked off to the side, but it could still get moisture into it. So after I took off all that potting material that just came right off, I put a little bit of silicone around it and then resealed it up. So this way the electronics don't corrode or anything. So it's still sealed, and that'll work great. So Auxbeam needs to work on that just a little bit. And the other thing is, most of the time, it won't even affect the average end user. Remember when I took this apart, they had these little extra pieces of wire sticking in the holes to take up the extra space because they drilled the holes out too big. That's a manufacturing problem. And honestly, if you're never going to open the light, before I opened the light, it was perfectly fine. Everything was nice and tight inside of it. So it works from the manufacturing standpoint to fix a boo-boo or a little quick goof type of deal. I would like to see them do a little bit better job on the manufacturing, but otherwise it's perfectly sealed. It works beautifully. And in case you're actually looking and you see a secondary bracket here, I actually made these. Their main bracket is nice and strong, but the way the bumper is on my 2013 Soul, without this secondary stabilizer bracket that I made, she would jump up and down. So this is purely just for the way I installed it on my car. Depending upon where you mount it onto your vehicle, the main bracket might be strong enough, but I felt the need to put on a second stabilizer so this way she's rock solid. It's not going to bounce up and down. So each installation will be different. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down below. Thumbs up, please. I'll see you next video.